I wanted to start with really a question is why are we so stuck when it comes to our health? And I think that we're not stuck because of lack of information. We've got more information than we could ever need at the palm of our hand. So we're not stuck for lack of information. We're really stuck because we've accepted a story about ourselves that really is not true. So most people don't have a knowledge problem. We have a belief system problem because we've been told that you're sick because you're just getting older, or it's just bad genetics, or aging, it's just normal, or that you're just always going to struggle with your weight or with pain or with declining health, and that's just something we're just going to have to accept. And after hearing this long enough, I think we actually start to believe it, but the truth is your body's designed to heal itself. Your brain is designed to adapt. Your metabolism is designed to keep you regulated. And we're not designed to get sick and suffer at the ages and at the times that we do. So somewhere along the way, we stop believing that real change is even really possible for us. And not for other people, but, for us. And tonight is really about reclaiming that belief because health is not reserved for people that are lucky or that are young or just have great genetics. Health is reserved for people that are at the point where they say, I'm done. I'm just tired of living below my potential and I'm ready to make a change. So we don't need perfection. We don't have to have, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just progress, not perfection. But really, we just need momentum. We need some clarity. We need structure. We need alignment, and we need a game plan. And most importantly, we need to break that identity that says that this is just who I am. I'm just going to have to learn to live with being sick and suffering. So over the next hour and a half or so, I'm going to try to give you a framework. So basically give you a roadmap where you can take control of your blood sugar and your structure and your nutrition and fitness and deal with the emotional and spiritual part of the health equation, help with the nervous system, and then more importantly, to help change that belief system. Because when our belief shifts, then behavior changes. And when behavior change lasts long enough, then transformation is inevitable. So if you're ready to stop thinking of yourself as a victim and you're ready to take some ownership and stop blaming genetics or aging or bad luck, then I invite you to lean in. This could be one of those, hopefully can be one of those line in the sand type moments. So here's what we're going to go through. Here's what tonight's about. So there's 8 pillars to longevity and to health. So fitness would be one. And I'm going to try to make the case to you tonight that muscle is the key to healthy longevity. It's an endocrine organ. We're going to break that down, but muscle is the key to healthy longevity. We're going to talk about blood sugar and a thing called insulin resistance. And I'm going to show you how insulin is actually the bad guy in the story. And we think of insulin as just something that we need. People take it, some people don't. But really, the less insulin you need over the course of your life, the healthier you're going to be. And then your mitochondrial health. 90% of the energy that's made in our body is made from the mitochondria. It's a little organelle within every cell of our body. And if we don't have healthy mitochondria, we're not going to have good health. So we'll break that down. Sleep and the importance of sleep and how to get better quality sleep. Structure, because we know structure dictates function. And then we're going to talk about your nervous system, which is the master control system of every aspect of your body and health and healing. And then we're going to go through spiritual health and a little touch on emotional health as well. So that's what the next hour and a half or so will be about. And then at the end, if you can hold your questions to the end, we'll do a little bit of Q&A. And then as you're eating, we can try to stick around and answer all the questions that we need to. So, according to Tufts University, and this has been repeated over and over, about 7% of Americans have good cardiometabolic health. So what that means in the inverse is that 93% of Americans have poor metabolic health. So, and you look at the statistics, like we're seeing catastrophic rates of every chronic disease that you can imagine, from cancer to heart disease, diabetes, neuropathy, fibromyalgia, dementia, Alzheimer's. You name a disease, it's worse now than it was 20, 30, or 40 years ago by a mile. And nothing we're doing in the traditional medical health care system or sick care system is really doing anything to turn the tide. They can do a great job of ameliorating symptoms and keeping us comfortable, but it's not really fixing why we're in this shape in the first place. And it really comes back to those 8 pillars. And if you look at the stats, 74% of Americans are overweight or obese. About 50% of Americans are either diabetic or pre-diabetic, so they're moving in the direction of diabetes. I saw a stat the other day that only 17% of American youth are fit for military service. So that is the future safety of our country, of our nation. We spend about $4.9 trillion every single year on what we call healthcare, which is more than every other country spends by a mile. And yet we rank like number 69 when it comes to the list of all the healthy countries. So we're spending a tremendous amount. 17% of our GDP is spent on healthcare problems or health problems. Starbucks spends more money on health than they spend on coffee beans. Ford Motors spends more money on health and insurance and sickness than they spend on steel. So 17% of every dollar we spend goes toward health and sickness and disease. And we know that 80% of our healthcare spending is on chronic disease, not acute problems. So it's reversible, it's preventable, it's largely manageable if we get to the root cause. So fitness would be the first pillar. And again, muscle is the key to healthy longevity. If you look at all the longevity studies, the more muscle mass you can keep on your frame as you get into older advanced age, the healthier you will be. And we'll talk about some of this. So I want you to keep, has anyone ever heard of Joan McDonald? She's kind of she's my inspiration. So I want you to keep her story in mind as we go through some of these steps to being healthier. I want you to keep Joan's story in mind because there's a part of your brain that's going to say, you know, I can't give up eating sugar and I don't want to exercise and I don't want to lift weights and I don't want to do, like, I'm just not the kind of person that can do those things. So the minute that thought comes in your head, I want you to think of Joan's story. So Joan, when she was age 70, she had never worked out a day in her life. Never exercised other than walking her dog or doing some basic whatever. But she never worked out. She had high she was on proton pump inhibitors for her acid reflux. She was on high blood pressure medication. She was on statin medication for her high cholesterol, and she had bad knees. And she dealt with obesity and other problems like that. So at age 70, her daughter came to her. Her daughter was into fitness and health, and she came to her with tears in her eyes and said, "Mom, you're dying. I'm watching you decline, and I really want to see you make some change, and I'm willing to help you." So she got her inspired, and she got her on a nutrition program and a fitness program. And this is after 2.5 years. So that's the same, and that's with no Ozempic, no steroids, she wasn't on TRT. Like, she just changed her lifestyle. She did the work, and within 2.5 years, she's off all the medications and doesn't even look like the same person. I mean, look at those triceps. And that's at age 70. Like, she'd never worked out a day in her life. So part of me is like, well, if Joan can do it, then I could do it. Like, what's her excuse? What's my excuse if Joan could do it? So I just want to use that as a little bit of inspiration. It's never too late. You can build muscle at any age. There was a study that was done that to qualify for the study, you had to be in a nursing home and you had to be over the age of 90, which is like nobody here. So to qualify for the study, you had to meet those two parameters, and every single person over the 12 weeks gained muscle, lost fat, improved their energy level, increased their insulin sensitivity, like every single marker of health improved, but they had a game plan. So remember Joan's story. So some of the science behind this, if you have low muscle mass, you have a 50% higher risk of death. If you have low muscle strength, you have a 50% increase in mortality. And if you can improve your strength and your aerobic capacity, then your death risk goes down about 40%. And now some of the big benefits to strength training and to building muscle is it improves insulin sensitivity. And again, we're going to talk about insulin a little bit here, a little more detail, but insulin is the bad guy in the story. I know some people need it. It's a necessary hormone, but it's the bad guy in the overall health story, especially for Americans. Improving your metabolic health and improving muscle helps to control inflammation. Do you guys know what diseases are linked to inflammation? Everything. If you name a disease, you're right on, Lori. If you name a disease, it's either caused by inflammation or it's driven by inflammation or it's made worse by inflammation. And that's one of the crises that we deal with in America is just this chronic overload of inflammation, and we're going to talk about how to reverse that. And it enhances our metabolic health. Some of the aging benefits is it prevents frailty and reduces the risk of disability, and it helps us to maintain our independence. And I don't know about you guys, but I always say I want to die young. I want to die young as late as possible. That's the name of I want to live long and just die quick. Like that is the name of the game in my opinion. I don't want to be in a nursing home. I don't want to be bathed by a stranger while I'm staring at a big tray full of pills and medications every day. We want to live long, live functionally, live healthy, and then go to sleep and not wake up. Go be with the Lord, right? So that's my goal. And muscle it's a survival organ. We have to stop thinking of it as you're going to just look better in a bathing suit, which you will, or you're going to have a little more energy, which you will, but it's really it's a necessary organ for survival of our species. And we know that strong people live longer. That's just been repeated over and over and over again. So how do we do this? Number one, we have to lift heavy things. And this is not the slide most people want to see, but you have to lift heavy things. And for some people, a 5 or 10 pound dumbbell is a heavy thing. So you start where you're at. And I don't care if that's starting with a 2 or 5 pound dumbbell or just using your body weight, but we have to start lifting heavy things and ideally doing that 2 to 4 times a week. And I'll get to that later. We have to prioritize our legs, especially for men. As someone who was cursed with genetic chicken legs, I could say that it's always ridiculous. You go to the gym and you see these guys with this big, huge upper body, and their legs are just super tiny. So for men, even for that reason, prioritize your legs. But your legs are where the most mass of muscle exists in your body. And when you can strengthen your legs, not only are you better at getting off the toilet and getting up and down a flight of stairs, but it's stimulating the most amount of growth hormone. It regulates the most amount of insulin. It helps to release, it helps to suppress insulin sensitivity. So all around benefits when we're improving our leg strength. And then there's 3 things that are really primary. You want to do squats, hinges, and then I should have put lunges on there as well. Does anybody know what a proper hip hinge means? So Tommy, if we can give Tommy a little round of applause, I'm going to get him up here. Tommy is our resident trainer. He's been with us how many years now?
2013.
Okay, yeah, that's a long time ago. So Tommy's great. He's going to show us what a proper hip hinge looks like. And the way that I teach people to do this, kind of the simplest way to do it, is you start with your feet against the wall. So you put your heels against the wall, you put one foot in front of the other, and then take a shoulder width stance from here. So that's the starting position. That's where you want to start. And then he's going to hinge at his hips and try to touch his butt to the wall. And you don't have to necessarily get all the way to the wall. That would be the goal. Some people start with a half a step away. But you'll notice if you have him stand back up again, when he bends, the only thing you really see bending and moving is his, do it from the side. There you go. So you could kind of turn to the side. So he's not rounding his shoulders. He's really not bending his knees. He's got kind of a comfortable position with his knees. But he's driving his glutes back. And then when he stands up, he's driving his glutes forward. So the whole movement, if you picture like a Barbie doll or a Ken doll that's just bending at the waist, so it's purely moving and hinging at the hip. And when you do that, you activate the glutes, which is the reason most people have chronic low back pain, is because their glutes have completely shut off. And then it strengthens the hamstrings, but it's also working all the muscles along these paraspinal muscles of the posterior chain, so the paraspinal muscles, the glutes, the rhomboids, the lats, it's strengthening all those posterior muscles that keep us upright in space. If you ever, I've got a 4-year-old son. Thank you, Tommy. Give him a round of applause. So I've got a 4-year-old son. I've got an 18-year-old daughter and a 4-year-old son. So keep us in your prayers. So it's same wife, by the way, in case you're wondering. She stuck with me that long. But anyway, so my 4-year-old, if you watch him walk around, he walks around like this. Like you can see space between his elbow and his back because this is normal, healthy, anatomical posture. But most of us walk around like this, and we think this is just normal. So the entire posterior chain just goes completely dormant. The glutes deteriorate, and you kind of tuck the pelvis under, and then people wonder why their back hurts all the time and why they're stiff and achy all the time, because they have not activated the posterior chain. So the hip hinges, and Tommy's got a great program. We'll kind of get you set up with him. He'll walk you through all the mechanics of how to get started with this, and then eventually how to add weight, because most people will start with like a broomstick, and then they get like dumbbells, and then eventually can get heavier and heavier. So squatting, hip hinging, and lunges, and then focusing on strength over the scale. So it's not about pounds lost, it's about strength gains. So make that the marker, because yes, if you have weight to lose and you're building muscle, you will lose weight. I mean, it's almost guaranteed, but the more important factor is that you're building and strengthening muscle. And muscle weighs about 4 times more than fat does by volume. So fat, a pound of fat is about the size of a brick. And a pound of muscle is maybe like 2 of my hands or a little less than that put together. So muscle weighs more than fat. So when people, ooh, my man, is that a pound of each? Yep. Is it? Yeah, so it's not quite 3, it's about 2 to 1 in size. Thank you, buddy. I'm going to have to play with that. Thank you, buddy. Yeah, so that's muscle, and that's fat by volume. So when people say, you know, I lost 10 pounds, you probably didn't lose 10 of these, but you're losing a little bit of fluid and gaining the muscle. That's the key part. Thank you, Tommy. Appreciate that. I didn't even know you had those. So strength over scale. Balance training, super important, especially as we get older. So make sure in your workout you're incorporating some things that use like one-legged balance, use some lateral plane movements. Most people, when they work out, they work purely in a frontal plane, just doing things treadmill and stair stepper and bike. And they want to do some things in a lateral plane, which Tommy can teach you. And by the way, too, falling is the #1 cause of traumatic death in people over the age of 65. So the #1 reason people over 65 die from trauma is because they fell. And that doesn't mean they died on impact. You've heard of people, you broke your hip, died of pneumonia because they break their hip and then they're stuck in bed, and because they're horizontal, they develop fluid in their lungs and that becomes infected and leads to pneumonia. So it starts their demise from losing their mobility. And then also vibration therapy. Do you guys have a vibrating platform? We have 5 of them in our office. We're big fans of vibration therapy, especially as we get older. Highly recommend you get those. And then doing things with intensity, bursts of intensity. Short, high intensity, short duration, bursts of intensity. And the way that bursting feels, or the way you want to remember that, is like when you get to that point, then you've achieved that intensity burst. And you don't have to stay there long, you just need to get there. So for most people, they go walk for a mile, and I tell them, you know, at one point during your walk, just get to a point to where you're out of breath. Because that little bit of extra stimulus is what creates that whole change, that whole hormonal cascade shifts when we push our body just that little bit extra, even for a short amount of time. And you can do it with weights, you can do it with cardio machines, you can do it with just about anything. So insulin resistance, this is a biggie, and this is a big vicious cycle. So the way it starts is we eat too many carbs, Too many carb consumption. So basically every morning, most Americans wake up and they eat their bowl of cereal or their bowl of oatmeal, or they'll do their biscuit or their waffle or their pancakes or their muffin or their bagel. And then for lunch, they have their sandwich with chips. And then for dinner, they eat their big bowl of pasta. Carbs, 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 carbs. So we're literally drowning ourselves in carbohydrates. And when we do that, the blood sugar goes up. And because the blood sugar goes up, your pancreas has to secrete more insulin. And then over time, because you're chronically secreting too much insulin, your cells become resistant to the insulin and it becomes damaging to the mitochondria. Again, we'll talk about that in a moment. So you start damaging the mitochondria. So then you have to produce more insulin to get the same response, which promotes inflammation. Again, what diseases are linked to inflammation? Amen. And then that increases your carb cravings because now you become leptin resistant. You can't hear the hormone that tells you to burn fat. Your ghrelin goes up, so now you're more hungry all the time, and the vicious cycle continues. And when you're looking at blood levels, so if you go to a doctor, I'll make this statement. If you go to a doctor that doesn't routinely check your fasting insulin, find a new doctor. Like, I hate to put it that way, but they're not even scratching the surface at looking at your metabolic health. And your fasting insulin should be between 1 to 5. It's nanograms per deciliter. You want between 1 and 5. Now, on a traditional blood test, they'll tell you as long as you're below 20, you're fine. Well, 20 is pre-diabetic. So you want that number preferably below 5. And then your A1C, anyone heard of hemoglobin A1C? It's your 90-day average of blood sugars. You want that between 4.5 and 5.2. But most people I consult with have been told as long as it's below 5.6, you're fine. Well, 5.6, you're right on the doorstep of diabetes. So we want that number to come down more and more and more. So the biggest culprits when it comes to insulin resistance, I would say number one would be white bread, or really bread in general. The bread we eat in the United States is not even really considered food in Europe or even in China. So the bread that we eat here, 200 years ago, we stripped away all the bran and the germ and the fiber and all the nutrients, and that was in an attempt to make it more shelf stable. And because now it doesn't have any vitamins or it's completely dead, we enriched it with a chemical called folic acid, which is a toxic chemical, but we think we have to have folic acid for neural tube defects and for pregnant women. But folic acid, about 60% of Americans have a gene mutation called MTHFR. Have you ever heard of the MTHFR gene mutation? So 60% of Americans carry that gene mutation, which keeps them from methylating folic acid. They can't. It's toxic to those people. So now, because you're toxic, you're poisoned by the folic acid, you have fatigue and anxiety and depression and ADHD and enhanced inflammation. And then because the bread wasn't white enough, we bleached it with chlorine gas. And because it wasn't fluffy enough, we added a chemical called potassium bromate and also another chemical called ADA, which is found in yoga mats, by the way. And it's illegal to put that in the bread in Europe and in Spain and even in China. So China's doing better than us when it comes to our bread consumption. And then to increase production, we added glyphosate to the wheat to dry it out and make it more stable. So now you're having endocrine and leaky gut issues. So now you're bloated, brain fog, tired, and you blame the gluten, which gluten is really just the scapegoat. That's not the problem. It's the grain. So the real issue is the ultra-processed, chemically altered, bleached, bromated, fake vitamin-filled bread that's soaked in glyphosate. So that's the problem. And again, we consume it at almost every meal. I had a lady just came in the other day. She's celiac, which means she can't touch gluten. Like can't even breathe it, gets sick if she's in a restaurant that serves it. But she went to Italy and she said, you know what, let me just kind of blow it out. I'm going to eat pizza, croissants, biscuits, whatever, drink wine. And she felt amazing, and she lost like 7 pounds when she was in Italy. And then she came back to the U.S., back to her gluten-free lifestyle, and she got sick within a week, and she gained all the weight back like almost overnight. So it's the quality of the grain, it's the quality of the bread. And it's also the bread, the pasta, the cereal, crackers, chips, pretzels, cookies, bagels, muffins, pastries, donuts, even oatmeal, which is peasant food, by the way. Tortilla chips, corn, like that. We're just consuming highly processed grains, which drive up our blood sugar. The body releases insulin, then it starts that whole entire cycle. So we'll talk about what to eat next. So we call this turning off your GPS. And if you've ever heard me talk, I usually add this slide anytime I talk because it's pretty easy to remember. So you want to turn off your GPS. So for most people, they're eating a ton of G and P and S. So their GPS is set for cancer and heart disease and diabetes and Alzheimer's and chronic fatigue and arthritis and autoimmune disorders and neurologic disease. It's driving every one of those conditions. So the G stands for grains, just like we talked about. So the bread, the pasta, cereal, crackers, chips, pretzels, cookies, bagels, muffins, pastry, all those things are in the grain category. And then you have your processed food and processed seed oils. Most people know that processed food is not good for them. Like, we're sort of past that. If you get your dinner from a bag that's handed to you through a window, it's probably not going to be a good dinner. Like, we get that. And then it's all the other processed seed oils, like the corn oil and canola oil. And by the way, canola, does anybody know what canola oil stands for? Canola? Yeah, it's Canadian oil low acid. So it's an acronym for genetically modified rapeseed oil. So they take rapeseed, which is completely inedible, and they run it through a press, and the press creates this nasty, toxic, stinky sludge, and then they have to deodorize it with hexane, and they add other chemicals to make it palatable. So by the time it makes it to your grocery store shelf, it's already rancid, omega-6, highly inflammatory. But the conundrum is, if you look at that bottle, it's got the American Heart Association's stamp of approval on the bottle. How do they get away with that?
Donate a bunch of money.
Yeah, if I say how, if I ever ask the how question or why, it's probably a money. The money's probably going to be they can put that stamp of approval on just about any product. It's just pay to play. They pay for the endorsement, they stick it on the product. So then you have your canola oil, you have your cottonseed oils, and your just all the other seed-based oils. So the best oils at low temperatures are butter and olive oil. And you have your butter and tallow and ghee and lard. Those are your good low temperature. At high temperatures, we recommend avocado oil and coconut oil. So at high temperatures, if you're going to be frying something or cooking something really hot and heavy, then you want to use avocado or coconut oil. Very high flash temp, omega-3, doesn't break down. And then the S, you guys know what the S stands for? Nope, strawberries. Yes, sugar. Yeah, so sugar. So we consume at the early part of in the early 1900s, I think it was 1905 is when they did this data, we consumed about 15 pounds of sugar per person per year in the United States. So 15 pounds, early 1900s. How many pounds of sugar do you think we consume today? That's right. About 150 pounds. So 10 times more sugar today than we consumed just 100 years ago. And then increased sugar in the teeth leads to what? Cavities. Increased sugar in the bloodstream leads to diabetes. Increased sugar in the brain leads to, have you ever heard of type 3 diabetes? Alzheimer's, dementia, neurodegenerative disease. They're now calling those diseases type 3 diabetes, not because it's the exact same pathway, but the increased consumption of sugar and carbs leads to the same process that drives neurodegeneration and neuroinflammation. Increased sugar in the liver leads to fatty liver disease. Increased sugar in the female reproductive organs leads to PCOS and infertility. Increased sugar in the man's sexual organs leads to erectile dysfunction. Increased sugar in the joints leads to arthritis. Shall I continue? So sugar is one of the main things that we've got to get a handle on. And then when you're adding in not just the 150 pounds of sugar, but now you have the processed grain and the enriched wheat flour and all the other grains, then you're looking at another 150 to 250 pounds. So it's anywhere from 300 to 400 pounds per year, per person, of sugar and grains. But we're just getting sick because of our genetics. Like all the diabetes and the cancer and the heart disease, it's just genetic, right? Was that true 100 years ago? No. So it's not our genes, it's what we're doing to our bodies that's driving that epigenetic expression of genes. And when you look at Okinawans and you look at most centenarians, those are people that live to over 100 years old, they have the genes for cancer, and they have the genes for heart disease, and they have the genes for obesity. Those genes just never get turned on because genes are switches. You have to turn the switch on by your lifestyle. But if you never turn the gene on, the gene never gets expressed. So our lifestyle plays a much bigger component than our genes do. It's estimated that genes account for about 5% of our health and disease. But we're told it's like 95%. So you can out lifestyle your genes any day of the week. So insulin, the way we want to control this is we want to try to eat our protein first. Most Americans are highly deficient in protein. You need a gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight every day. So if your ideal body weight is 150 pounds, then you need about 150 grams of protein every single day. An egg has 6 grams of protein. So for most people, I think it's most women get around 50 to 60 grams of protein a day, and most men get somewhere in the 70 to 80 or 90 grams of protein a day. So we're massively protein deficient. And you have to have protein to make all of your enzymes and to drive all these biomechanical reactions within the cells. Like we have to have more protein. And then the other thing with protein is it stabilizes your blood sugar and it fills you up. So if you eat the protein and the fat first and then eat the carbohydrates later, then you'll go a long way with making some of these changes. We even say, like, if you're going to eat a cheeseburger, fries, and a Coke and a milkshake, like, do the meat on the cheeseburger first and then do the fries and the Coke and the milkshake. Because even changing the order that you eat, now I'm not advocating Happy Meals, but changing the order in which you eat your food will change the amount of insulin that gets released in response to that. Because remember, insulin's the bad guy. We want to eliminate liquid sugar. Say never drink calories. Ideally, never drink calories. I'm not a big fan of diet drinks either, but we do like Zevia and Waterloo and LaCroix. Has anyone ever heard of LaCroix? LaCroix is like drinking water and somebody shouts out a fruit from the other room. That's a joke. So eliminating liquid sugar and orange juice, apple juice, those sweetened beverages. Post meal walks. So they show just taking a 10-minute walk after you eat. Put your fork down, go out and take a walk for 10 minutes. You can buffer the insulin response by up to 40%. Just taking a walk, not even doing heavy, intense exercise. And then strength training. Probably seeing a theme here with this whole strength training thing. I'm trying to encourage you guys. We have to start strength training 2 to 3 times a week to build muscle. And then some of the other foundational principles is a thing called intermittent fasting. Has anyone heard of intermittent fasting? Privileged starvation, what we call that. So it's condensing your eating window to about 6 or 8 hours per day. So if you're going to eat, try to eat in a 6 to 8 hour window. Now, the hard part for me is I'm trying to get about 220 grams of protein per day, and I'm eating my food in a 6 or 8 hour window. So I just have to be very, very intentional about getting plenty of protein in that 6 to 8 hour window. Because we get up in the morning, we eat breakfast, and then we have a snack, and then we eat our lunch, and then we have a snack, and then we have dinner, and then we have a bedtime snack. Like we're never giving our cells a chance to reset those insulin receptors. So most people, when they do the intermittent fasting, they'll start with like pushing their breakfast to maybe 11 or 12, and then eat your dinner at 6 or 7. Like that's doable. Like we can condense that window. So even if you're not going to change your diet, keep eating whatever, fast food, whatever, condense it to a 6 or 8 hour window and see what happens. See everybody change with that. Stop grazing between meals, and then pick foods that don't have labels. Like apples don't have a label, and steak doesn't have a label, and chicken breast doesn't have labels. Like eat foods Instead of reading the labels, let's try to eat foods that don't even have labels in the first place. But by the way, too, if you can't pronounce the ingredient on the label, it's probably not good for you. Good rule of thumb, if you can't pronounce what's in it, don't eat it. I know that's earth-shattering. And then try tracking your fasting insulin, not just your glucose, because your fasting insulin is a much earlier indicator than your fasting glucose or your A1C or all these other diabetic type markers. So fasting insulin's huge. Yes, ma'am.
You said the protein first. Do you mean like all the protein or like first bite protein?
First meal of the day, make that protein heavy. So that's a good point. We always say savory for breakfast. So don't do sweet for breakfast, do savory for breakfast. So your bacon and eggs. He said bacon. Bacon, eggs, sausage, turkey bacon, turkey sausage, cottage cheese, avocados. Like, there's plenty of options, and it might get a little boring. Who cares? Like, we're trying to be healthy. You know, I always say if you're over the age of 7, you can no longer say that food tastes yucky, or I don't like drinking water's yucky. Like, we're big boys and girls now. It's like time to start eating for nutrition and health and longevity, and not just because of that mouth pleasure. We all love the mouth pleasure. So yeah, start with savory in the morning, and then if you're going to do your carbs, do them later in the day. So, and by the way, too, I'm not totally anti-carb. Like, we need carbs, but we also need to be metabolically flexible to handle the carbs. So there's a point at which, for a lot of people, like if they'll do our ChiroThin program that we'll talk about, you know, for the first 6 weeks, they're restricting their carbohydrates. They're keeping them pretty low because you have to retrain the metabolic machinery to use fat for fuel instead of using sugar for fuel. Because your body only runs on 2 fuel sources. It uses fat or ketones, or it uses sugar or glucose. Fat or sugar. So most Americans are pure sugar burners. They have a lot of cravings, they have a lot of fatigue and a lot of problems with sleep, and their hormones are erratic, and they have a lot of chronic pain. So those are people that are pure sugar burners. So we have to switch your body's machinery to using fat for fuel instead of sugar for fuel. And it just takes a little bit of a period of time, and then you can reintroduce the carbs and 80-20 rule. At that point, it's 80-20. 80% healthy, 20% southern. That's the 80-20. So with the mitochondria, it's a little organelle that exists in every cell of the body, and when the mitochondria become damaged, it leads to neurological disorders, skeletal muscle disorders, metabolic problems, inflammation, cancer, cardiac disease, neurodegenerative problems, respiratory issues, aging, weakness, pain. Virtually every disease that we worry about is linked to mitochondrial dysfunction. You remember what percentage of Americans have poor functioning mitochondria? 93%. So it's essentially everybody. So that's the main target. So we lose about 10% of our mitochondrial function every year, every decade after age 30. So if we're not doing anything to enhance it, it's on a natural decline. We have about a 5 times higher risk of mortality if we have a low VO2 max, which is how much oxygen your body can efficiently use. So improving your VO2 max will improve mitochondrial health. And then about a 50% risk reduction by improving our mitochondrial fitness. So if we get the mitochondria healthy, everything else downstream can improve. And then we know it's linked to heart disease, neurodegeneration, cancer, and diabetes. Virtually every disease that we worry about. So here's how we do it. We have to build muscle. Here we are with the muscle thing again. Building muscle is one of the best things you can do to improve your mitochondria, because the largest amount of density of mitochondria exists in the skeletal muscle. The meal timing, so that's where we're doing the intermittent fasting, or you can even do like an OMAD, which is 1 meal a day. So for some people, if they do like 1 day a week, they just eat dinner and that's it. That'll give the mitochondria a chance to heal and repair. Doing like a 3-day water fast or a 3-day bone broth fast, that's another good way to improve mitochondrial function. Varying the exercise, so you're doing the weights, and you're also doing some of the high intensity cardio where you're getting out of breath. That's one of the other big ways. And then another one is exposure to sunlight, red light, near infrared, or sunlight. So we use a lot of red light therapy in our office. Zavell is a big fan of red lights. They have a big bed in their facility that uses it as well. And then one of the things we recommend is every morning, if you can do this, every morning as the sun is coming up over the horizon, stare directly at the sun for about 5 or 10 minutes. So as the sun is kind of peeking up over the horizon, stare directly at the sun for 5 to 10 minutes. And we've been told that that's going to burn out your eyes and cause cancer. And the UVA and UVB is so low at that level, you're not getting any tanning rays from that. And it stimulates the mitochondria, and it also stimulates those little cone cells in the eyes, which a lot of people have seen an improvement in their vision. And the other big benefit is it resets your melatonin cycle. So when you stare at the sun for 5 minutes as it's coming up over the horizon, it resets a 16-hour melatonin cycle for when you go to sleep at night. Now you've got a surge of melatonin when it's time to go to sleep. So the benefits of that are, I can't say enough. So getting light exposure. But we're still hunter-gatherers genetically. Like our genes are like 0.04% different than they were when we were living in caves and wearing loincloths and climbing trees. Like we're basically still hunter-gatherers, but we don't hunt and we don't gather. We shop online and we use DoorDash, right? So we don't hunt for our food, we don't cook it, we don't prepare it, we don't have to kill it. Like we just, order or put something in the microwave, right? Imagine if you took a monkey from the jungle and you gave him a desk job in Franklin. So you take him straight from the jungle, you wake him up in the morning and he eats his bagel with his coffee or his Starbucks, and then he drives to work and sits in his cubicle all day while he's eating Doritos and dealing with stress and other coworkers all day. And then at night he drives home and eats his big bowl of pasta and watches Netflix all night. What happens to the health of that animal? Does he get healthier or sicker? How many times out of 1,000? 1,000. So what's the best solution for him? Do you give him antidepressants for his depression? Do you give him stomach pills for his acid reflux and give him all these pain medications for his joint aches? Or do you need to return him to the way that he was genetically designed to live? And I'm not advocating getting back in loincloths and living in a cave, but we got to be moving toward the way that we're genetically designed, because we're just not living congruent with our design. And sun exposure is a big part of that. Sleep. So everybody knows that if you're not sleeping well, less than 6 hours a night increases your mortality by about 30%. Cardiovascular disease risk goes up about 48%. Diabetes goes up 41% with poor sleep. And even 1 week of poor sleep reduces your immune function by 70%. So it doesn't take long. This doesn't take years and years of bad sleep to start really breaking our body down. And then we know that chronic sleep reduces and accelerates Alzheimer's risk by about 35%. So for me, I get about 6.5 is kind of my sweet spot. 6 to 7 is kind of where I fall. Most women need a little bit more. It's just the way God made you. So we need a little bit more if you're female. And then we'll talk about this too, is the timing of sleep as well.
Amazing night of sleep. The best night of sleep of your life is simple. For the last hour you were awake, don't use your phone. Okay? Now, that's something you can all try. Now, how about just the last 20 minutes right before you go to bed?
I really don't. That's even worse.
So it seems like sleep is really important.
Sleep is the most important thing in my life. I would take any pill, I would have any surgery for a better night's sleep.
Same. Definitely, I would do that.
Okay, how about just the last 5 minutes that you're awake?
I really don't think so, doctor.
Like maybe put your phone down, go brush your teeth, use the toilet, go to bed.
So you expect us to sit on the toilet without our phones?
Yes, it's crazy. Just like the last time you use it right before you go to bed.
Okay, so what time of day do you recommend that I go on WebMD and look up what all my rashes do?
Yeah, when should he look up his rashes?
Yes, you get the point. But that is weird. Like we would have never thought 20 years ago that we would go to the toilet carrying a computer with us. Like that just, and now it just is normal. So sleep's our master repair system. That's when things repair, is when you're asleep. You don't build muscle when you're working out. You build muscle when you're repairing and you're sleeping. You don't, optimize your hormonal function when you're awake. It happens when you're asleep. So everything that beneficial that happens in our body likely happens when we're asleep. So consistency, that's having consistent sleep and wake times. So I try to go to bed at 10, get up at 4 or 5, or go to bed at 11, get up at 5 or 6. Try to keep that same, even on the weekends. You try to keep the same exact sleep schedule. Digital sunset, no screens, 60 to 90 minutes before bed, or maybe even 5 minutes if you can give that up. Having a perfect environment. I would say in my house, that's one thing we really strive to do. So we keep it ice cold. It's like 65, 66 in the bedroom. Every light is completely off. I even took like a piece of tape one time and covered up that little light on the TV, that little red, little tiny light. Like every bit of light can mess up your sleep cycle. So we're really diligent about that. And then we use a sound machine. So you can do a quiet bedroom. I prefer having some of that background noise. And we take those sound machines everywhere. We even bring an extra one on vacation because one year one broke. So we make sure we have plenty of sleep success built in. Morning light, you want to try to get sun exposure within the first 30 minutes of waking, or if you wake up before the sun goes up, as soon as you get up, before you get to the coffee maker, flip the lights on. Like get your body in that rhythm of when I'm up, I'm awake. I like to sit in the dark, maybe turn the fire on, drink my coffee, but it's much better for our sleep cycles and for health to get some light ASAP. So the evening protocol, we recommend a 3-2-1 protocol. So 3 hours before bed, no food. 2 hours before bed, no work. 1 hour before bed, no screens. So no food, 3 hours. No work, 2 hours. Sheila, that's going to be hard for you. And then an hour before bed, no screens. And one thing I've started doing lately is I'll get like a podcast or some sort of scripture on tape or whatever and put the earphone in my ear, and then I'll just kind of doze off, but I'm not staring at the actual screen. 1 hour, no screens. No TVs, no phones, no iPads, no laptops, no screens an hour before bed. That's the hardest one for most people. And then nasal breathing. Mouth breathing is epidemic in our culture, especially with, you see all the sleep apnea and the CPAPs and all these other problems that people deal with. But there's a thing called mouth tape. Anyone ever heard of mouth tape? There's one called hostage tape, which I think is pretty cool. But you put the tape over your lips and it keeps your mouth sealed, so it forces you to breathe in and out of your nose at night, because mouth breathers have a much higher risk of cardiovascular disease and obesity and diabetes. It seems so simple. Like, who cares if I breathe in my nose or my mouth? But it makes a really big difference in how much oxygen you're utilizing and how much your muscles of respiration are having to work while you're sleeping. And if you want to get your husbands to stop snoring, get some duct tape, stick it right over that mouth. And then addressing structural problems that disrupt sleep and impair recovery. Because a lot of people are just uncomfortable. And we'll talk about forward head posture in a little bit too, because a lot of people have issues with forward head posture that are affecting this as well. So structural health, we got to have a healthy structure. Structure dictates function, and that's just a law of physiology. So your structure dictates your function. If your structure breaks down, then your function will suffer. If the arches in your feet are structurally falling down, is that going to affect the function of your feet? Yes. If you can't expand your rib cage, if functionally you can't expand your rib cage, is that going to affect your breathing? Yes. So we have to have proper function in order to, structure to improve function. And this is really why I fell in love with chiropractic, is because it's really, as far as I know, it's about the only health profession that deals with the body's ability to heal itself. Most other health professions are designed to cut out the organ that's malfunctioning, or replace the joint that's not working, or to give the medication to suppress the hormone or to suppress the inflammation. It's giving you something from the outside in versus allowing your body to heal from the inside out. And we need traditional medical care. Like, don't get me wrong. We need If you have a stroke or a heart attack or a gunshot wound, like, don't come to my office. Like, you got to go to the emergency medical system. Right? If you're bleeding, like, you got to do what you got to do. But for chronic disease and chronic conditions, taking drugs, and there's nothing about drugs and surgery that prevent us from needing drugs and surgery. Do you get that? There's nothing about a drug or a surgery that prevents you from needing the drug or the surgery in the first place. Now, while it has value and can help kind of clean up the mess once you've fallen off the cliff, it doesn't keep you from getting there in the first place. And those are all lifestyle and structure and function related issues. So the way our body works, I'll get that in just a second. So chronic back pain is the number one cause of disability in the U.S. It's linked to a 30 to 60% higher risk of all-cause mortality. And we know that fractures and falls are the leading cause of death in people over the age of 65, reduces our independence and accelerates our decline. So we have to deal with our structure. The problem is we're so conditioned that if it doesn't hurt, it's fine. It's like if my knee doesn't hurt, if my back doesn't hurt, then it must be fine. With structural problems, the pain is the last thing to show. Like, how long do you have a cavity in your tooth before you have pain? Or how long do you have a clogged artery before you have a heart attack? How big does a tumor have to get before it causes pain? So the pain and the symptoms and the things that we feel are at the end of the disease, not at the beginning stages of the disease. But the good thing is the pain is the last thing to show, and it's also the first thing to go away once we start moving in the right direction. It's kind of like if you broke your arm, you put your arm in a cast, 2 days later the pain is gone. Well, it's not healed yet, you just got it a little bit more stable, and now the pain, the alarm essentially goes off. So we have to restore the alignment. When we look at the person from the front, the spine should be pretty much straight up and down for the most part. And from the side view, you should see these three natural curves. Most people that we deal with have lost that curve in their neck. Sit up real tall, the way Mama taught you, and take a real big deep breath in. And now stick your head forward, and now take a big deep breath in. So we lose between 40 to 60% of our lung capacity when the head goes forward. If your head is back over your shoulders, you can get your arms, or should be able to get your arms above your head. If your head is forward, you can't get your arms as easily over your head. When your head juts forward, your blood pressure changes, your cortisol goes up. Everything changes when the head goes forward. And we know from plenty of data that these people live longer than these people do because it affects everything downstream. So we have to work to restore that alignment and proper joint motion. We say motion is the lotion. So if the joint can't move, it can't stay healthy. The way your knee stays healthy is through proper movement. Now, you don't want to damage it and have a football injury necessarily, but movement is what keeps those joints healthy. And then having movement hygiene. Most people I deal with, they sit way too much. They sit at the computer for 4 to 6 hours a day. So we recommend doing the 20-20 rule. Every 20 minutes, you take a 20-second break. So every 20 minutes, you're sitting at the recliner, or at the laptop, or at the computer. You got to take a 20-second break to get up and move around, or stretch, get your arms up over your head, just to break up the monotony of that stress that builds up over time. Same thing if you're sitting on the couch. Try to get up every 20 minutes or so. Stand up during the commercials. Strengthening, again, back to the muscle thing. We got to build our glutes, strengthen our core, strengthen our upper back, because most people are kind of walking around in more or less this posture. So we get really, really tight in our anterior delt and pecs, so we're really tight here, and then we're weak back here. So to combat that, we have to stretch here and then strengthen back here. So we have a lot of people, they'll stand in like a corner or even in like a doorway and then lean forward and stretch the upper chest and the front part of the shoulders. And then the strengthening for the back is you can get like a set of bands or a cable, doesn't matter, and then you're squeezing your shoulder blades together behind your back. So it's that strengthening those muscles that maintain that proper spinal alignment. And then doing the hip hinging to turn the glutes back on and strengthen the lower back. Foundational work, poor foot mechanics, Everything starts in the feet. When our feet hit the ground, everything changes. Can I get a volunteer? I promise I won't hurt you much. Come on up, sir. Give him a round of applause. What's your name?
Tito.
Tito. Let me meet you. I'm Ben.
Good to meet you.
All right, Tito, we're going to kick your shoes off. Probably could have prepared you for that a little better. Sorry. So we're going to take these. These are test orthotics. Just they're not made for you, but they're made for most people's deficiencies. And they have a correction for there's 3 arches to the foot, so the medial, lateral, and transverse arch. So what I'm going to have you do is stand behind these. Stand behind them. I'm going to have you put your fists together about 2 inches from your body. So I'm going to push down, and I just want you to stand up tall. You don't have to like fight me, but just stand up tall. Okay. Now stand on them. Same thing. Thank you.
Big difference. Thank you.
Yeah. So he's a great candidate for what are called functional orthotics. So people say that's witchcraft. How do you do that? But everything changes when your foot hits the ground. So if your arches of your feet are not well maintained, then where your body thinks you're at in space gets altered. It's called proprioception. It's like where your body thinks you are in space changes if your feet are not supported. And we're designed to walk barefoot on grass or barefoot in the dirt. And we wear shoes on concrete. So we don't do anything remotely close to the way God designed our feet to engage with the earth. And if you look at like Native American cultures or people in Papua New Guinea, their feet look like this. But our feet look like this. So we force our feet in these narrow toe box shoes, and people have bunions and calluses and Morton's neuromas and all these other things. So we're destroying our feet. So one of the most important things we could do is fix our function. So in the back there next to Tommy, we brought our little 3D scanner, totally free if you want to get scanned, but you stand on it barefooted, and it takes how many images? Like 300 different images of your feet, and it scans your foot to kind of see where those 3 arches are in relation to the earth. And then if you want, we can order a set of those orthotics. I wear mine every day. I don't not go without them, because the few days I've ever not worn them, my knee kind of hurts. My right knee bothers me. My back gets a little more achy and sore. So I think everybody that doesn't walk around on grass all day long, barefooted, needs to have those orthotics. And then breathing mechanics. So you want to improve your rib cage mobility. So we do that a lot with the adjustments. That's part of the chiropractic care that we do, is making sure the upper back is mobile, because every time you breathe in, your rib cage expands, and when you breathe out, it closes. Has anyone ever heard of box breathing? Highly recommend box breathing for everyone. So if you imagine you're looking at a box and it's 4, 4, 4, and 4. So you're breathing in through your nose 4 seconds. If you want to, let's spread some COVID. Come on. In through your nose 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you hold it for 4 seconds. And then you go out for 4 seconds. And then you hold that for 4 seconds. Then you go in, hold, out, hold, in, hold, out, hold. So it's like a box. And you do that 4 times a day and do it 4 repetitions. So 4 repetitions 4 times a day. 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, and 4. Something like that. But it makes a huge difference, not only with your rib cage expansion of getting oxygen into your tissues, but it resets the parasympathetic nervous system, which we're going to talk about. Your nervous system has really 2 jobs. Your nervous system controls everything that happens in your body. So every time your heart beats, every time you digest food, every time you breathe air in your lungs, every time you wiggle your fingers and toes, your brain is sending messages, electrochemical messages, down your spinal cord and out your nerves into every organ and cell and tissue of your body. Health and healing happens no other way. If I was to cut the nerve to your heart, what do you think would happen to your heart? Done. Is that a belief or a fact? Volunteers? No. You cut the nerve, the organ on the other end of that nerve is going to stop working. If we take a segment of the spine and let's say shift the vertebrae out of position. Say you had a car wreck when you were 16, or you played football, or you had a fall on the ice 2 weeks ago, or something happened to move the vertebrae out of alignment, and instead of cutting the nerve, it's putting pinching pressure on the nerve. What's slowly happening to the heart? Slowly dying. It's not getting the information it needs from the brain to tell it how to function. So the blood pressure can go up and cholesterol goes up, plaquing, arterial restriction happens. So the only way to keep that nerve healthy, you guys ever heard of Christopher Reeve? Like the real Superman? Not this Joker they've got today, but the real guy. So remember how he got injured? He was on a horse, right? He fell off the horse, he landed on his chin. He did like a chin plant. And I always thought that it severed his spinal cord, but it bruised the top part of his spinal cord. They said you could have taken your pinky and covered up the entire injury. It was like the size of my pinky injury to the top part of his spinal cord. But what did it do to his body? Yeah, right. Couldn't move his arms and legs. Couldn't breathe. He had to have a respirator to breathe. He had to have a pacemaker to keep his heart beating. They had to push on his bowels to make his bowels move. His immune system shut down. His hair fell out, and he died in 9 years. Now, was that because he didn't have the right nutrition or the right supplements or the right yoga class, or was he not getting the information from his brain to the rest of his body? And it only takes about the weight of a dime. If you put a dime's worth of pressure on the nerve, it causes about 60% loss of function. So a guy at the University of Colorado, Dr. Chung Ha Soo, did a study where he took bunny rabbits and he put little weights on their nerves, and he found just the weight of a dime caused 60% loss of function to whatever the nerve was controlling. So you really don't have to have major trauma. You could just sit too long, because it's big T and small t trauma that causes it. You have your big T trauma, which is car wrecks and falls and sports injuries, and the smaller T trauma is posture and sleeping on your stomach and high heels and bad mattress and too much time at the computer. So we add those things up, and it starts to affect the way the brain is affecting the organs. So my job is not to treat your back pain or to treat your heart or your stiffness in your lower back. It's to get the pressure off the nerve so your body's able to heal and repair and control itself the way God designed you to do. So that's the gist of that. And then releasing tension. So a lot of people have those knots, those little muscle spasms in the trigger points in the shoulder blades, sometimes underneath the lats. So we use, I have a thing called a Theracane. Anyone have a Theracane? At my age, everybody needs a cane, right? Got to have a cane. So it looks like a big shepherd's crook, and it's got a little ball on the end of it. You could flip it over your shoulder and dig into those knots. You can get it on Amazon for $20, right? So you can release some of that tension, because what your body's doing, it's spasming the muscles around your spine to try to stabilize your spine. Because your body will always sacrifice function for better stability. It'll give away function to make sure you're more stable. It wants to be stable at all costs. That's why your hamstrings will lock down and not let you touch your toes. You can't function because it's stabilizing your lower back. So you have to improve stability first. We call it, what I tell people all the time, and Tom, you can stop recording this. We have to improve it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. Unless it hurts, it's fine. If we could move our spine to our teeth, if we could stick it on our face, we'd pay way more attention to it. But the reality is it's just kind of back there, no big deal. But it's the main communication superhighway between the brain and the rest of your entire body. So important. So we know if your heart rate variability, which is how functional your nervous system is. Anyone ever heard of HRV, heart rate variability? It's the distance between your heartbeats. So a lot of these wearables and Whoop straps and these little things that we can get nowadays will measure your HRV, and it's a predictor of overall health. So you want your heartbeats to not be like a metronome. Boom, boom, boom. You want it to be boom, 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 boom. Like you want some spacing, because that means your body is, your nervous system's healthy enough to adapt to whatever's happening around you. You have a lot of heart rate variability. Your body can adapt on a dime versus stuck in a pattern where it can't, it just kind of gets stuck. So the better your heart rate variability, you want a high heart rate variability, decreases mortality, about 2 to 3-fold, cardiovascular disease 40 to 50%, and then having chronic depression, anxiety, or other nervous system related issues has a 30 to 60% impact on mental health. So your nervous system is one of the most neglected parts of our health that we tend to not pay attention to. So this is the normal curve of the neck. So if looking from the side, kind of the same way this guy is. So you notice from the side of the neck, you should have that arc of life. We call that the arc of life. Everybody hold your hand like the letter C. There was a neurosurgeon that did this in front of a bunch of other neurosurgeons, and he had them kind of do this with their hand. So it makes me feel smart to do it. But anyway, that's the normal curve of the neck. So your head sits on a shock absorber. It's brilliant. God's design is amazing. It keeps your head on a shock absorber. But then most people will start to lose that curve. Well, anyway, the way we get that curve in the first place is when we're babies and we do like tummy time, and then we learn to crawl and we learn to walk, and we kind of develop those normal healthy curves. And then we'll have a trauma or an injury or a fall, and then the first thing that you'll see, you'll notice the curve in the neck will start to get straighter. That's stage 1. And then as it continues to get straighter, you'll notice the disc spacing in the bottom part starts to collapse. And then your body, in its brilliance, starts using bone to stabilize that unstable part of your spine. That's what bone spurs and calcium deposits are. It's your body's way of trying to stabilize itself. If your left knee is out of alignment and your right knee is in good alignment, which one gets arthritis first? Because your body's laying down bone to try to create stability. So you didn't get there. I talk to people all the time like, well, it's just because I'm getting old. I'm like, well, how old is your other knee? She's like, oh, yeah. And it's fine, right? So it's not age, it's how old your trauma is. Because when you have trauma and you have damage, over time it starts to lead to that decay. So you have that curve in your neck. Everybody got their hand up? So the spinal cord is like the mushy part of your hand. It's nice and relaxed and soft and loose. Your spinal cord is that tube that your brain is using to communicate messages back and forth to your body. So when you have a nice curve, spinal cord works good. When you lose the curve, now your spinal cord is getting stretched and tethered and lengthened. It's like you're stepping on the water hose that your brain is using to try to communicate with the rest of the body. So how well is your cardiovascular system going to work? And how well is your immune system going to work? And how well is digestion? So it affects everything downstream. So we have to reduce stress inputs, and some of those are family members. So there's another name for stress, and that's called life. So like, we're never going to totally get rid of stress. I think until we're dead, we're going to have some degree of stress. It's just part of the human condition. But if we can reduce sort of the obvious inputs of stress, restoring motion, we got to have normal motion, stability. Remember, improving your ASS. And then breathing practices, building resilience, improving heart rate variability with consistent recovery practices. That's one of the things that Zavell does really well. It's just all based on recovery. So they have cryotherapy, and they have red light therapy, and they have, what's the other one right there?
We have compression, there's a dry flow tank, so it takes all the pressure off of the entire body. So
Great.
It's like you're floating without getting wet.
Beautiful. It's just recovery, because we have to put time and energy into the machine, because this is the only car we're ever going to have. We get one car, and we treat our car better than we do our body. Like, we would never put like corn oil in the gas tank of our Ferrari, but we put it in our bodies. So we have to invest time and money and resources. If you invest money in things that make you healthier, is that an investment or is that an expense? Do we just say that because it's the right answer? Or do we really believe that if we do things that improve our health, improve our longevity, and improve our function, that is actually an investment? We got to take that out of like the cable TV category on the chart, like the expense. It's not an expense; it's an investment. So we have to start looking at that when it comes to our health. So building resilience, digital boundaries. That's a big one for me because, I'm so important and I have to be connected to social media and have to keep my business, blah, blah, blah. But getting rid of that digital, I wish my phone would go away in some ways. And then correcting those subluxations. So that's basically what that is that we talked about. If you take that cross section, that's what subluxation is. So the adjustments are designed to reduce or minimize those subluxations, and then you do your job to keep everything healthier and stronger around it. Sure. Absolutely. You're welcome. And then one of the best benefits of improving your nervous system function is you're moving from that sympathetic dominance. There's sympathetic and there's parasympathetic. Sympathetic is fight or flight, running from a tiger. You're being chased through the woods. Parasympathetic is that rest and repair and healing. Most Americans are literally pegged. Their gas pedal is pushed all the way down on that sympathetic fight or flight dominance. So their blood pressure is up, they're vasoconstricted, like their body just is always running from a tiger. And your body can't determine whether it is a tiger or it's your mother-in-law. Like, your brain doesn't know the difference. It's just stress either way you slice it. So we got to be able to balance out our nervous system in order to have a chance to be healthy. And there's not a drug, there's not a surgery, there's not a focus in traditional medicine that really deals with that on any measurable level. So talking about spiritual health, so having community practice, purpose-driven life, and social connection, we know that there's a 20 to 30% lower all-cause mortality when you have a sense of community, when you're part of a group and part of a community that upholds you. Purpose-driven life, so having a purpose in life reduces mortality 15 to 30%. And then that social connection is huge. So loneliness, there's a great book called The Medical Consequences of Loneliness. I wouldn't recommend reading it. It's very meaty. But they showed that chronic loneliness is equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And if you look at what we did during COVID, where we forced people in their homes, can't go see their relatives, can't see their mom in the nursing home, we socially isolated everybody for a virus that turned out to be no worse than a strong flu that was genetically engineered in a lab and then released with a vaccine that was already kind of predetermined to be the treatment as they suppress natural cures. And I digress. How Fauci's not in jail, I'll never know. But anyway, hopefully we never let that happen again. That would be my hope. Cardiovascular protection reduces inflammation. So really, when you're looking at spiritual health, it's not just about where you're going to spend eternity. It's about how healthy your body is until you get there. So we have to have a consistent, healthy spiritual connection. Now for me, for the first 40 years of my life, I had a God-sized hole in my heart. And that came from abandonment as a kid, sexual abuse as a kid from age 12 to 14. So literally a God-sized hole in my heart. And I would fill it with achievement and with performance, people-pleasing, codependency, and then eventually with substances. It's kind of what I eventually leaned on. And then what I came to realize when I got to the end of my own self-will, so I failed, thank God. Like I couldn't do it on my own anymore. And I came to realize that I always believed in God. Like there was a belief there because I thought it was ridiculous to believe that everything that we have in this universe happened by accidental, random chance of some explosion of atoms that were the size of a pinhead that magically became everything that we see and everything we've always seen in this world. I just thought that was completely ridiculous. And that evolution's real. There's two kinds of evolution. You have your microevolution and macroevolution. You have micro, which is adaptation, change over time, different breeds of dogs, different beaks, lengths of beaks on birds' faces. Like we see things change over time. But the macroevolution, where you go from daffodils to dinosaurs and from little small, there's no evidence in the fossil record. There's a thing called irreducible complexities. There's fine tuning of the universe. There's I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. And it baffles me how some of the smartest people on the planet believe that everything happened by magical random chance. I can't wrap my head around that. So for me, I believed in God, but I never had a witness. And you realize that you can have a belief system, but once you have a witness, it can completely shatter everything you thought about, everything you believed. So for me, I had the belief, but I never had a witness. So when I finally came to the end of my own self-will, end of my own rope, I actually saw men, other men who lived, I got to witness them live their lives in a way that I saw Christ in them. So for me, um, there's no more question. I mean, I have a witness. I kind of know where I'm at. I know that Christ is the only way. So for any of you guys, if you're struggling, I would ask you to reach out or to lean in that direction, because we do have a loving God that sent his son for us. So I hope that message runs true. So um, some of the benefits: you get to reconnect with your meaning, and how you can have meaning without believing there's a God that created you baffles me again. Looking beyond our symptoms to find purpose in our healing, because sometimes the question is not why God, it's what God. Like, why me? Why this? Why that? Why? The real question is what? What's the lesson? What are you showing me? What are you teaching me? What is the way I can contribute to other people beyond my own suffering? And then having a daily practice, quiet time. For me, I call it my PMR. It's like prayer, meditation, reading. So I got to do that every morning to fill myself up in order to be able to pour out to my kids and to my practice. We're a pitcher. You're like a pitcher of water. You can't give what you don't have. So if we don't refill, we can't pour out. And we have to live a RE life. We have to refill and replenish and rejoice and repent and remember and get restored. And all these RE words, I strive to prayerfully, clumsily try to do that in my life. Release that illness identity. I am diabetic. I am XYZ condition. I always try to stop people when they say that, because you are not your condition. You are not your disease. Your identity is in Christ. So your identity, your diagnosis is not who you truly are. And then cultivate a system of gratitude. Your brain cannot exist in depression and gratitude simultaneously. That's a fact. You can't be anxious and grateful at the same time. Your brain can't pull it off. It's like the brain just can't do it. You can't be depressed and in gratitude at the same time. And I've said this before, but if you need gratitude, if you have trouble finding gratitude, just realize there's 1 million families in Egypt that are raising their kids on a trash heap. They live their entire life on a trash dump, and that's where they live, and that's where they raise their children. So we have it so good in America. We won the lottery, and the fact that we complain about all these little frivolous things, again, we're missing the big picture. Practice forgiveness and surrender. For me, surrender meant weakness. Surrender meant losing. Surrender meant, it's funny, all the paradoxes in the Bible where surrender is actually your greatest victory. And powerlessness is where we actually find our greatest power. It's paradox after paradox after paradox. And then living in forgiveness. And then align daily actions with your core values. Building a faith-centered community with those connections, like we said earlier. And then the beliefs about your healing will shape your body's ability to heal. And this may sound like placebo effect, but I've seen it over 20 years now. The patients that come in that believe that they're going to get well and that this is just part of their journey and don't identify with their disease are the ones that get better. The mindset and the spiritual grounding is so important with that. So chronic stress increases all-cause mortality by 30 to 40%, depression by 50 to 60%, and again, that loneliness, 15 cigarettes a day, about a 30% increase in all-cause mortality. And then for me, this is one thing that really helped me. I would say the Bible, for sure. And then this book here, it's called The Voice of the Heart. And I'm not a pastor psychiatrist. I can only share with you what's helped me. But that book in that top right-hand corner has completely changed my life, and now there's a Bible study that goes with it. And I can let you make a copy of this that kind of ties the emotional and the spiritual together. But it's based on the idea or the postulate that we only have 8 core emotions. There's only 8. And this could be wrong, but for me, I'm convinced. There's only 8 core emotions, core feelings that the Lord gives us to live a full life in this crazy, broken, tragic, messed up world that we live in. So there's only 8. Just like there's 3 primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. Any big argument about that? No, there's 3. But out of those 3 colors, you get millions of variations. You know there's 52 shades of green in Ireland? 52 shades of green in Ireland from those 3 basic colors. There's 7 musical notes? Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, quesadilla? I don't do music. But there's a set number of notes, so you can't be a musician if you don't know the notes. You can't be an artist if you don't know the colors, and you can't live a full life if you don't know how to identify your own emotions or feelings. So this is huge for me. So there's 8 core, and you see them there's hurt, lonely, sad, angry, fear, shame, guilt, and gladness. Oh, there's one good one, is what most people say. There's like 7 bad ones and 1 good one. Well, I'm here to tell you they're neither good nor bad. They are amoral, and they're tools, because they're tools that allow us to deal with this world. So hurt is a feeling that we feel when we get wounded. So if somebody hurts you. You ever heard that sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never? That's so wrong. I'd rather have a broken arm than have a parent that didn't love me, or a person who said I was no good or worthless. Like which one heals better and heals faster? So hurt is a feeling that tells us that we've been wounded, but if we don't know what to do with our hurt, we'll move toward that impairment column. We will drift toward a thing called resentment. And resentment is where hurt people want to hurt people when they don't know what to do with their hurt. They say resentment is like drinking poison hoping that it kills the other person, or cutting yourself hoping they bleed. That's resentment. I would think our country would go a long way if we could deal with our own resentment. And the gift of hurt is a thing called healing and courage. And it's a chance to risk being hurt again. So the goal with this is to be okay and be able to identify when we're having those feelings in the middle column, try to avoid moving toward the left-hand column, and then try to do the work, which is the willingness, patience, work, and time. Willingness is having the willingness to recognize what I'm feeling. Patience, which means to wait well. Work, and then time. And then you'll get the gift of all those feelings. And the gift of hurt is healing and courage. Loneliness, the impaired version of loneliness just tells me that I'm made for relationship. But if I don't know what to do with my loneliness, I don't have anyone to take that to, I'll move toward apathy, which is just where I'm done. I'm going to shut me down in order to not have to be in relationship. And the gift of loneliness is intimacy, which is into me see. You get to see into me. So not the kind of intimacy people are thinking about, but true intimacy where you live your insides on the outside. Sadness is a feeling that we feel when we've lost something that matters to us. It's a feeling of loss. And if we don't know what to do with our sadness, we'll move towards self-pity, which means you feel my sadness for me. I don't want to feel the sadness, not capable of feeling it, so I want you to feel my sadness. You do my work for me. And then the gift of sadness is a thing called acceptance. And with acceptance, there's 4 okays. It's not okay, and it's okay that it's not okay, and it's going to be okay. If your child dies, we lost our daughter in the second half of a pregnancy 17 years ago, and that was not okay. And the fact that that's not okay is also okay. And ultimately, it's going to be okay. Right? Those 4 okays. And I think that's the closest to peace that we really get. And I know there's a peace that surpasses understanding. I get that. But in these terms, I think that's the closest to peace that we're ever going to get. Anger is a feeling that brings me toward what I want. That's the big confusing one for most people, because we think of anger as you did something wrong, or you're ripping pictures off the wall or punching holes in the drywall. That's a thing called rage. So there's no rage in anger, and there's no anger in rage. They are polar opposites of one another. Rage is actually rooted in terror, which means rage means power over someone. I will destroy you to keep you from getting to me, where anger is an invitation to someone. There's other names for anger which are synonymous that are not exact, but they're similar. Hunger, thirsting, wishing, wanting, hoping. Those are all angry words because they bring me toward what I want in life. And it's also the most vulnerable feeling because it exposes me, exposes what I want. And the gift of anger is passion, and passion is a willingness to be in pain for something that matters more than pain. Mothers have a tremendous amount of passion. They're willing to be in a lot of pain for something that matters more than the pain does. And then fear. I remember when I was a kid, I had the No Fear t-shirt. Fear, false evidence appearing real. Fear is pain leaving the body, or one of those silly euphemisms. But fear just tells me that I'm in danger. And if I don't know what to do with my fear, I'll move toward anxiety, which is some usually physiological effect to try to control what I'm feeling because I can't tolerate the fear. And the gift of fear is wisdom and faith. And then shame is a feeling that I'm human. It's a recognition of being human. And if I don't know what to do with my shame, I'll move toward toxic shame, which is that voice that says, you no good, dirty, rotten piece of garbage. My son has a tremendous amount of healthy shame. I remember when he was little, he's like 1. He's like, you know what? I'm going to pee on me, and you're going to clean it up. Because I can't, and you have to. Because he's just fully human, fully himself, the way God made him. Healthy shame. But the toxic shame is where we spank him for peeing on himself, right? We try to. It's a contempt for that person. And then guilt. The difference between shame says, and guilt and shame are kind of synonymous, but guilt says I made a mistake. Toxic shame says I am a mistake. Do you get the difference between those two? Big difference. And then with gladness, finally the gladness. If you get good at doing those 7 that you don't like, the ones that are painful, then you'll have gladness, guaranteed. Because nobody leaves their house saying, man, I can't wait to feel hurt today. I hope sadness just grips me. Like, nobody wants those, but if you're human, you're going to have those. So if you don't know how to recognize them, you're not going to be able to control or regulate them. They're going to control and regulate you. And that has such major health implications. And I'm not qualified to teach on this. I'm just trying to encourage you to get the book. But that can be a game changer because until you're dead, you're going to have those feelings. So I encourage you to dip into that. So we have to be able to identify it, like what am I feeling? And then be able to express. And there's a mantra. It's called FFTTGG. Feel your feelings. Tell the truth about them. Give it to God. Feel your feelings as you find them. Recognize that I'm afraid, or I'm sad, I'm lonely, whatever. Tell the truth about it. Tell it to God. Tell it to yourself. Tell it to somebody else. And then you give it to the process. You give it to God. And God owns the process. So we're handing it over so we don't have to carry it. That's how we work through these emotions. And then resolve, and then to work to build resilience. Because as we practice this more and more, it will build the capacity to be resilient and to sit in those feelings without having to run from or to escape or to medicate what's going on inside. Develop that emotional vocabulary to be able to name what you feel. And that seems so elementary. It seems because babies, like when we're born, we have the capacity to do all those 8 feelings. Like, because babies do sadness, they howl when they're hurt, they reach out when they're lonely, they cry when they're sad. Like, they know inherently, intuitively, it's a language God gave us before we ever had verbal capacity or intellect and thought. Like, we knew that language first, but then as we got older, we learned that all those things are dangerous, and they're all painful, and they're all bad, and we need to avoid those things or shut them down or suppress those things. And we start using our brain to hide what's happening in our chest versus using our brain to articulate what's happening in our chest. One thing they told me in treatment is the greatest, longest journey you're ever going to make is the 18 inches from here down to here. That's the hardest, longest journey you'll ever make, but it was worth every second of it. Create boundaries that preserve emotional energy, and then healing shame, self-judgment at their source. And again, health is not fixed by a pill. There's not a pill, but there's a path. And if there was a pill, I would sell you one for $10,000. I would sell you two in case the first one didn't work. But there's not a pill, there's a path. And it involves those 8 pillars that we just talked about. So the fitness, blood sugar, insulin resistance, mitochondrial health, sleep, structure, nervous system, spiritual and emotional health. Hopefully this is the start of a journey or a movement toward better health and better wellness. Now, in our office, we have Coach Jessica. If you can raise your hand. You guys met her earlier. So she is our functional, give her your title.
Health and wellness coach.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So she got certified in functional medicine. So she's very good. How many years have you been doing this?
This is my
4th year. Amazing. She's been an awesome addition to our practice. So she can help with nutrition, weight loss, finding the right supplements. If you need to get the right testing to figure out what you actually need and you're not just shooting from the hip. These are some of her results. So this is Paula. She lost 37 pounds in 6 weeks. So she did the 6-week metabolic reset program. It's called ChiroThin, which I hate the name of that. I would change it if I could. But it's really to reset the metabolism. So the goal of it is not to lose weight, which you will. But the goal is to teach your body to use fat and ketones for fuel versus the sugar and the carbs and the glucose for fuel. So it's taken that 6 weeks to rebuild the machinery of the cell to use fat for fuel instead of sugar. And then we have Julie, lost 14 pounds, 18 inches. That's one of my favorites right there is Miss Sheila. Sorry, I didn't forewarn you that we were going to put that up there. But Sheila did amazing. I don't even remember what your numbers were. Moving on. This is Bert. I think he lost about 50-something pounds over the 6 weeks. Anyway, so everybody loses weight, but the weight loss is not the goal. That's not the goal is to get you healthy, to reduce the inflammation, to reduce the to improve the insulin sensitivity, and to get your body healthy because, we get, like we said, we get one life, we get one chance. Now you got some information. Now it's a decision time because a year from now, something's going to be different a year from now, or either you're going to be mostly the same, still dealing with pain and illness and sickness, or you're going to be more healthy, more vibrant, and in a better place with your health. So now it's about a decision time. And in this packet that you got, this one here that says Fix Your Health in 26. It's got a list of symptoms. Yeah, please.
Over 20 pounds. This is awesome at what she does. And I think they have a real program and she is the best. She does all the help we need.
Yeah, thank you. And this lady did it traveling all over the globe. Where all did you travel during your program?
Gosh, the first time I was in Costa Rica, I've been to Europe a few times. I went to Australia and Morocco, and I still lost. I think the first time I did it, I lost 25 pounds in 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And the second time, about 36, I think. I went off and learned my lesson and went back on. And this last time, I lost about 24 or 25, and my friend did it with me, and he lost 35, 36, and he changed his entire life.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That was last summer, and he calls me all the time and says, oh, Mom, I went, I'm doing 80-20 now. This is great, and it really resets his confidence in his mind.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and he feels better, able to be a better dad and a better husband. So.
That's the real blessing in that too. A1's nice. Congratulations. That's awesome. I think the average for women is like 24.5 pounds, and of course men lose 35 and up, But again, it's not about the weight loss. And there's a part of your brain that's like, yeah, well, I can't do that, or that's too hard, or I'll do it when I have the time, or I'm traveling too. She traveled more than you did, I guarantee you. Like, there's a part of our brain that wants to talk ourselves out of doing things that'll get healthier. So just remember Joan's story. Joan was 70, never worked out a day in her life. 2.5 years later, you saw how buff she was. So it's all doable. We just have to, we don't need more information. We need more implementation. So on that sheet, any issues you deal with, if you're a guest or even if you're a current patient, check off what you're dealing with. And then at the bottom, if you have like you're interested in neuropathy or chiropractic care or the health coaching consultation with Coach Jessica, on the very back of that sheet, you mark the times that work best for you. And then we will call, get you scheduled, and then figure out if we can help you in this journey. So, all right, guys, we ended a little bit early. I'll stick around for some Q&A. I think the food is almost ready. So, please. And she did say the food is ready. So if you want to take off, but yeah, go ahead, Sheila.
The fasting insulin test, how often should this be measured?
Depends. So if you're starting your journey, you'd want to get a baseline. And then if you're making some changes and going through whatever kind of program we're doing, or if you're doing it with us or elsewhere, then you want to, 60 days, 90 days later, retest and see that your markers are coming down. And then once a year when you do your physical, you can do it more than that, but I would say just make sure they add that as part of the physical. And make sure your doctor also checks your vitamin D level as well, because vitamin D is a hormone, it's not a vitamin. So you got to have, it's like 300 different enzymatic processes. You have to have vitamin D for your immune system. That's why there's not a cold and flu season, there's a vitamin D deficiency season. That's why it shows up in the winter and goes away in the summer. Like, it's not magic. Like,
Why do they call it a vitamin if it's a hormone? That's so interesting.
I don't know why she asked why they call it a vitamin and not a hormone. I don't know. It's a precursor hormone, so technically it's not like an insulin or a testosterone. It's a precursor. Yeah, Ron?
Two questions. One on when you were talking about the blood sugar,
Mhm.
like the pastas and stuff like that, can you recommend or do you have a list of like healthy pastas that come from Europe that we can acquire or buy?
Yeah, you can buy some that are imported directly from Italy. I don't know the exact name. We don't do a lot of pasta in my house. Suzanne or Jessica would probably know. But yeah, there's some that you can get that are better than what we get here.
Pasta?
hmm
Aldi has the best Italian flour pasta Italian made.
Aldi? Aldi?
And the second thing
Mhm.
is, I've noticed some of these centers that are popping up with these injections with different packages and things of that nature.
hmm
Can you elaborate a little bit on those as far as like these centers that are popping up? How good are they? Is it?
You're talking about like the IV vitamins,
Yeah,
things like that?
stuff and all of that stuff, because I don't know much about that. Like, seeing these places as I'm
Mhm.
driving around or something, are they helpful? What are your
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to like the ingredients that they use or where they source the materials, but I mean, yeah, for recovery and if I felt like I was coming down with the flu or something like that, I would get like a Myers cocktail or some sort of IV infusion. I think a lot of times it creates a lot of expensive urine. So you're going to pee out what you're not using. But I think obviously we start with the nutrition, make sure we're getting a quality diet, eating the right foods. But a lot of that you can get from just a basic supplementation plan too. I don't see the need in having to get an IV every week. But I think for certain things and certain conditions, yeah, to get you out of a rough spot. Sure.
How much protein can your body process per week?
Yeah, that used to be, I used to tell people it was like 40 grams per, if you're a man, it can only be 40, and if it's a woman, it can only be this. The research is getting a little more liberal with that your body can actually utilize a lot more than what we thought.
I can eat a bigger steak.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, because sometimes I'll eat 80 grams in a sitting. Now, with your protein, you don't want to get more than 25% of your daily allowance or what your target is. No more than 25% from like shakes and supplements and bars, and like you don't want to get 150 grams of protein from a shake or a bar. You want to ideally get it from eggs and steak and chicken, beef, lamb, turkey, fish. It's protein, veggies, and fruit, nuts and seeds, berries and beans, herbs and spices, omega-3s.
What do you think of protein pasta? Is that the beginning?
Depends on the pasta, I guess. Yeah, where's it?
My daughter's worried by, oh, I'm getting all my protein because I'm eating this pasta.
Yeah, I want to know what's in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably not the end of the world, but yes, sir.
Is it bench protein better, one better than another?
I think beef is probably the best protein in terms of like bioavailability and spectrum of amino acids. What's that? More complete, yes. Like you can do it if you're vegan from like quinoa and lentils, and I always say I love vegans. I eat them all the time. It's just really hard to get 160 grams of protein per day from beans and lentils and quinoa, and it's doable, but you're going to be eating a bucket of it. Like it's a lot. So, and you still have to take B12, right? Any diet that forces you to have to supplement with something to make up, yeah. Yes, ma'am?
The author is Chip something.
Oh, Dodd.
Oh,
Chip Dodd.
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 And
It's called the voice of the heart. Yep, that's exactly right.
And I'm going to the grocery store
Mm-hmm.
today because my
Coming with you.
okay, my mental for getting ready for the football game tomorrow, I want snacks.
Okay.
Offer suggestions.
Yeah, so we do a lot of like those Siete chips. Siete, you ever heard of that brand? It's cassava flour, but it's like a tortilla chip. So it's low glycemic and there's no GMO, any of that stuff in there. But they've got like a Dorito kind of tasting one and a regular corn chip, and then salsa, guacamole, almond butter, healthier peanut butter with like carrots or celery or, that kind of thing. Sure. Yeah. Now with protein, this is kind of where we're getting into some of the nuance, is that the health of the animal makes the difference. So if the animal was healthy before it became your chicken wing or your chicken breast or your chicken nugget, if the animal was healthy, then it's a healthy version of all that. But if the animal was kept in a pen and raised with grain and antibiotics and everything else, yes, you want the free range organic, ideally. And when you're making the move to organic, you want to switch to your meats and dairy first. Don't worry about the vegetables until you get your meat and dairy first. Because with the vegetable, they'll spray the produce and you'll eat like one generation of a tomato or whatever. But with the cow, it's been eating those grains for months and months and months and months. So it bioaccumulates in its tissues more toxins and more antibiotics, more poisons, essentially. Yeah.
I know you're family oriented. Could you slide everybody gently into this? How do you get out of the food in a bag stuff? That's hard.
Yeah, be the change. I mean, you can take the garbage can to the pantry and start just shoveling stuff in there, but everybody's going to hate you. Or you can just make as many changes as you can for you and then hope everybody else just jumps on board. Or if you're the cook, then don't be a short order chef. You cook one thing and you take it or leave it. And then the best part is just trying to get everybody, like we're trying to do this together as a family because we want to be healthier, we want to live longer and have less pain and play with our grandkids. Like you got to have the why behind it, I think, too. Yeah. Yes, sir. Sorry.
Are there any healthy sugar substitutes?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so I'll use stevia, use monk fruit. I like allulose. So allulose works a lot like sugar. If you're going to use a cup of sugar, you would use a cup of allulose, and it actually has a little bit of a GLP-1 agonist effect. Those are probably my two favorite: stevia and allulose and monk fruit. Yeah, you're welcome. Stevia works a lot like an artificial sweetener. Like a little bit goes a long way. You would never use a cup of stevia. But it has kind of a bitter taste in the beginning because most people are sugar burners. So they're used to the carbs and the sugar. So the stevia tastes kind of bitter. But once you get rid of the carbs and the sugar, the stevia starts tasting really sweet. But obviously avoiding the artificial sweeteners as much as we can. And
Following up on that, I've heard that, erythritol,
erythritol, yep.
is that good with your stevia, and that means stevia?
Yeah, it's a sugar alcohol, so it messes with the gut microbiome. Um, it's a little harsher on the bacteria that live in the gut. So like Truvia is like stevia with erythritol. It's a mix of the two. So regular stevia would be better. Yes, ma'am.
I know the glucose was some of the supplements that
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think she had in there the omega-3s because we all need more omega-3 fatty acids. Yeah, is omega-3s? We'll let him do the Vanna White. Thank you, thank you. So vitamin D. Well, wait, do you care to read them off?
Yeah, please speak out now.
Well, you got a big bundle.
B supreme.
Yep, so that's a B complex. So whole food based B complex.
Omega male pro.
That's the fish oil.
B supreme.
Yep, especially this time of year, winter season, immune function.
Magnesium alley.
Yep. So magnesium is pretty commonly deficient in most Americans. It's very commonly deficient in most Americans. So magnesium you need for about 200 different processes, enzymes, and turning on of genes. So we need more magnesium generally.
Stella C.
The C, yep. So especially this time of year, I'll take about 2 of those a day, which is about 1,200 milligrams of vitamin C. Potent antioxidant and supports immune function and gut health. Many applications there.
And vitamin D, rebound intake.
Yeah, that's 10,000 units of vitamin D with K2. So anytime you take vitamin D, you want to take it with K2. Otherwise, you can get too much calcium in the arteries if it doesn't have the K2. The K2 pulls the calcium out of the arteries and gets it into the bones. So in your vitamin D, you want your blood level to be between 60 and 80. It's kind of the target. So if you get your blood test, make sure it's between 60 and 80. Now the problem is on the traditional blood work, it says as long as you're above 30, you're fine. 30 is the cutoff for rickets. So you're so deficient that your bones are going to get soft, bow-legged, that kind of thing. So most of these recommended daily allowances are not set up for health and wellness. They're set up for toxicity and deficiency. So it's not really, are you in a healthy spot? It's, do you have enough to not be deficient and not so much that you're toxic? And when they do the recommended daily allowances, they base them off of 20,000 typical Americans. Well, I don't want to be compared to 20,000 typical sick, diabetic, obese, inflamed Americans. I want to know what the ideal range is for those nutrients. Does that make sense? So.
Whole wheat, is that bad because of whatever they put on the wheat in the field and everything?
Yeah, that still has the potassium bromate. It still has the chlorine gas. It still has the glyphosate.
And what if you can't take vitamin K? Or
Mm.
shouldn't take vitamin K?
Because of bleeding?
Blood thinner, yeah. Blood thickens it actually. It's a blood thickener.
Right, but yeah, K2 has a blood thinning.
Oh, yeah. That's interesting. Well, thinning or thickening messes with my blood, so.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to go over your doctor's head with that.
Yeah.
I think it would be fine, but Again,
I'll check it out.
consult your physician.
So it scares me to take, and I've just started taking since I've been seeing you the vitamin D,
Hmm.
and so that worries some if that's going to do something. What did you say it does to your heart? And the calcium.
It takes the calcium out of the arterial system, like so it's not scarring the arteries, and it pulls it into the bones, so it kind of keeps it out of the blood flow. Because you don't want excess calcium circulating through the bloodstream.
So just to take vitamin D might do that alone.
Yeah, well, I don't know. You could take it for 60 days and get your blood work and see where you'd land there. I don't think it's going to be a critical in 60 days life. You know, not that you'd have. I don't know. I don't want to
Okay, yeah. Okay.
talk to him, see what he says or her. Yes, ma'am.
Sourdough is all the rage.
Sourdough's better.
I was gonna ask you.
Yeah, it's better because it's fermented, and if you're making it yourself, you can control the grain, and you can control if it's been sprayed, or you control so you're fermenting it, so you're keeping a lot of the healthy bacteria intact.
What's the best kind of flour to use with that? I've been buying the Canadian flour.
Oh, for sourdough, I'm not a sourdough. I'll eat it, but I try to eat it sparingly, but yeah.
I've been feeding that starter for 5 years. It's about 170 years old. It came from Ireland, so I know.
Well, then you're probably better, way better. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
What is your opinion on that apple cider vinegar?
Great.
I take a shot in the morning
Mhm.
when I wake up, and
Yeah.
a shot in the evening before I go to bed.
Yeah, we don't get many lacto fermented foods anymore. Like we used to, when you had to preserve things, you had to do it in jarring or canning and things like that. But we don't eat a lot of pickles and olives and kimchi and apple cider. Like we just don't get those very often anymore. So you're getting like the probiotics, you're getting the digestive enzymes, alkalizes the body. I think it's great, especially if people have like, what's that now?
I have no gut issues. I have
Perfect. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Yep. You get the mother.
I do.
The mother. Yeah. Awesome.
Is that the brand?
No, it's Bragg's. Bragg's.
It has with the mother at the bottom of
And
it.
I found that Sam's Club, they have a repack.
With the mother.
Okay. It's there.
It's the cloudy stuff in it. You need to shake it up really good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did not first.
Sure.
Light exposure.
Mhm.
So let's say for some reason, whether it's traveling, work, I'm not able to go outside and exercise.
Mhm.
Is there any benefit to the sunset at all?
Yes. Yeah. Same thing. It's the first 10 minutes, last 10 minutes, kind of when the sun is at that angle. So there's no UVB. You're just getting the UVA. And yeah, just try to stare directly into it. No glasses, no sun, no windshield. Take out your contacts. Like just get direct exposure. We've just been so lied to about the sun is the devil and the sun. I mean, we're still hunter gatherers. We're supposed to be living outdoors, not indoors. Like, if the sun was the main cause of skin cancer, then we'd all get it on the tip of our nose, on the back of our hand, and on our forehead. My grandfather had it on the back of his knee. He's like, well, it's from riding the lawnmower. I was like, how are you riding that lawnmower? There's about 400 cases. There's like 400 cases of anal melanoma every year. Like just the sun, really? And the cultures that get the most sun have the lowest amount of skin cancer. It's the pasty, white, Anglo-Saxon, European descent, Scottish, Irish. We're the ones that get the most of it. And Seattle has basically rates of skin cancer on par with everywhere else in the country. So reckon that one. Now, I'm not advocating getting burnt. Don't go get burnt. Like, no, nobody wants to burn their skin. Like, heaven forbid. But we need to build up a tolerance and a regular level of exposure. That's God's multivitamin is coming from the sun. So, yes, sir.
Also, I'm standing outside.
Great. Grounding. Yep. Grounding or earthing is, yeah, I think that's fantastic. You're pulling electrons from the earth, so it alkalizes the body, stimulates the mitochondria. Yeah, there's Tons of benefits. He's talking about going outside in your bare feet, standing on the grass. Fantastic.
How long?
10 minutes, 15 minutes, when there's no ice on your yard. Yes, sir?
What about sucralose?
Sucralose, the Splenda.
Is that?
Yes.
Sucralose?
Yeah, sucralose is one of the worst. It's a chlorinated sugar molecule. So they take a sugar molecule and they kick off an OH group and they add a chlorine atom. So you're essentially consuming chlorinated sugar. My mom was doing like the baking with, she had the big bag that, and her joints were getting swollen, and so just get off the Splenda, see how that, and within like a week, 2 weeks, it was totally gone. So yeah, sucralose was initially marketed or discovered as a pesticide. And then they realized we're dumb, so the humans will eat it too. But here's a little thing, like with stuff like that, if you take sugar or take Splenda and put it out in the summertime and see which one the ants will eat, do a scoop of margarine, do a scoop of butter, put it on the same plate, see which one the ants will eat. They won't touch the margarine, they won't touch the sucralose, but they'll eat the sugar and they'll eat the honey and they'll eat the butter. So it's like those little animals are way smarter than we are. Yes, ma'am. Like the erythritol and
Is that what,
yeah, that's what she's talking about. Yeah, it's just damaging to the gut and the microbiome.
so even though it says sugar-free, still it has sugar?
Yes. And initially, even if you're doing stevia, even if you're doing allulose, your non-nutritive sweeteners, you're still getting a little bit of an insulin spike. So you're still telling your brain that you're going to get some calories. So it's still, for some people, they need to lay off of that for a good, couple, 3 months in order to reset everything. But I think a little bit of stevia, a little bit of allulose is fine. But yeah. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I was going to say age that we would like it is a lot of improving ADHD, anxiety, all things.
Mm-hmm.
What's your pitch to parents, teachers about how to manage that in young kids?
Run them to death. Beat the crap out of them every day. I beat the crap out of my son every day. Like I go home and it's like time to wrestle and I'll throw him and he jumps on my back and that's like one of the best. The only way he sleeps. He's like a husky. So movement and activity, and then cutting out the excess grains, sugars, and artificial sweeteners. Those are the biggies. But most of these kids are eating Fruit Loops for breakfast, orange juice on the way to school, Pop-Tarts, and all this other. As a teacher, though, like how much can you really get into their pantry? It's so hard. It's easier just to medicate them. Let's give them Ritalin. Let's give them a methamphetamine, which will speed up their brain so it matches the pace of their body, and then they can focus and read and learn better, and then have a 50% greater risk of being an addict or alcoholic as they get older. So